I'm Jennifer Pelton. I'm the Development Director at the Public Justice Center. We are a nonprofit legal services organization that addresses injustice and poverty at the root cause of the problem. So everything that the Public Justice Center does is designed around changing a practice or a system that isn't working largely for people who live in poverty. We look at the root cause of a problem and we use all of the tools that we can. As lawyers, our lawyers use every tool in the toolbox. They litigate in court. We have a strong appellate advocacy project. We advocate in the legislature. We advocate with government agencies. We also have a strong community education and outreach component to our work. If there is a law that protects the rights of a worker, for instance, it might be very little known about that law. Workers might not know they have that right. And so we do what we can to get the word out through networks of allies and organizations, but also to the workers themselves to let them know they have this particular right. We look to see if laws that exist are actually working for the people they are designed to work for. And if not, what can we do to fix that law or challenge that law or change that law? So everything we do is systemic in nature and looks to create a better society for everyone, more access to justice, access to health care, access to education, and so forth. The art form that our advocates and lawyers have used the most over the course of the years has been film. We started making films about 8 years ago, and we have a number of films that either explain a right or how to represent yourself in rent court, how to know that you're an employee who has been classified incorrectly by your employer, and so you're not being paid what you're due. We also have, so that's the art that we've largely favored is film as a tool for our advocacy. As the fundraiser and the storyteller for the organization, the way that I use art is to put our work in context of large societal concerns. So if you don't know anything about our work, but you care a lot about people who are homeless, I can explain to you through art that your concerns about people who are homeless tied in with the work that we do to combat homelessness or change certain things that keep people homeless, etc. That story can be told very effectively through visual art, design. We have an exceptional design partner. We have designed events around storytelling and song and music and theater to put the work of our advocates and our lawyers in context of the larger social story. I think there is plenty of room for the arts and the justice communities to work together. I think I come to the PJC from arts management. I have both a justice life and an arts life. And I immediately see the intersection. And so while I've been here, it's been very important to me to have, to explore opportunities where artists and lawyers work together, or where art partners with us to tell our story. In my position, from where I stand, art helps change laws by drawing attention to an issue and making it a no-brainer that we need to change this law or we need to fix this problem. I don't think that advocates and artists think outside their own silos enough and partner creatively. I don't put the blame with the people, though. There's some sort of connective tissue that's missing between our communities. But the more I do this work from the Public Justice Center, working with artists and reaching out to artists who are justice seekers at heart, when you find those impassioned people on either side of the equation, if you create the container in which they can work well, the results are powerful and magical. That container is missing. That dialogue needs to continue. I think many of us do it naturally. Justice seekers who are poets, who use poetry to, but tend to do it, our day job is the justice work, and our night hobby job is poetry slams or giving concerts or making quilts. But I think when we start to figure out ways to marry that, those two parts of ourselves, we have a stronger fabric. I think money is an obstacle as well. When we started making films, it was easier. 8 years ago, it was easier to raise money for films than it is today. It's more people are doing it, so less people are funding them. So the opportunity to be different or unique or interesting, and it's difficult to raise the funds that you need to do the project. We don't deliver a lot of direct service at the Public Justice Center, but in other nonprofit organizations, when money is scarce and money is tight, the idea of doing art comes second to the idea of feeding children or clothing the homeless or sheltering someone. So how we integrate art into our mission is a creative recipe we're always struggling with. So I moved to Baltimore from New York almost 20 years ago, and one of the things I loved the most about Baltimore was its grittiness and artiness. And over the past 20 years, the explosion of art in Baltimore has just been incredibly exciting to be witness to and to experience. I really admire theater companies that are telling difficult stories or putting on plays that challenge, bring up topics that are important. I had a really fabulous experience at Single Carrot this year, witnessing plays that talked about or provoked thoughts about really big issues. The Public Justice Center partnered with the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company a few years ago. They had a run of Merchant of Venice, which was written hundreds of years ago about a very specific community and time and themes. But the themes in that play resonate with the work that we still do at Public Justice Center in the 21st century. So we partnered with their actors and our lawyers. We put together an event for donors of both organizations to come together and see scenes with the actors from the show, and then our lawyers talked about how those scenes and those themes play out in the everyday work that we do today. And then the donors in the room it was a very vibrant conversation that was created and facilitated by that experience. I love the current Wall Hunters project with the Baltimore Slumlord Watch, driving through the city and seeing huge murals on abandoned buildings. Vacants have been a huge concern of mine since I moved here 20 years ago. And my drive to work is through several neighborhoods in which it breaks my heart to see the disinvestment in the city, the grand old buildings, some of these grand old buildings even standing vacant and dying. The community is dying, neighborhoods dying. And to put, there's the folks who put murals on abandoned houses that are pretty to look at and they kind of dress up the neighborhood a little bit, but that this project through Wall Hunters and the Slumlord Watch really calls attention to the reasons why these buildings are vacant. And I appreciate that use of art and that use of channeling anger and activism about an issue that concerns me. After a disaster happens, there is a trauma, particularly to the people who've lived through that, and particularly to the children, many of whom stuff that trauma and don't speak about it. And my husband has a background in emergency management and first response to disasters, a career of 30 years doing that, and has been working with a theater company and a specialist, a nonprofit organization that goes around the world working with children in countries around the world after disaster. They don't do a lot in the U.S., but they've brought their method and their training to this acting ensemble, and they're teaching how the use of nonverbal play can release trauma that's stored and hidden in a body. And the idea of applying that to children who live in the city and experience trauma every single day in many, many ways. You don't even know you're being healed by art when you're in that experience. But and I know from some of the folks that were part of this initial workshop that it brought out stuff for them and how beautiful and free they felt after they had this nonverbal play experience. So I look forward to seeing more of that happen in our community.